Good morning and welcome. We are going to give it a minute or so to let more people join in before we start. Feel free to grab yourself some water or coffee before we begin, and we will get things started shortly. While we wait, I'm going to drop a question into our Q&A chat to get everyone familiar with this feature. Would love to hear about any fun weekend plans you have going on. Chris and Morgan, what do you have going on this weekend? Anything exciting?
I am going up to Niagara-on-the-Lake in
That's very
Canada. So,
enjoyable.
yeah, my fiance's birthday is Saturday, so planned a little surprise getaway.
Aw, happy birthday to him.
It's more for me, but
Okay, so yours sounds fun, Morgan. The only thing that comes to mind and that I can keep obsessing about is my 16-year-old is going to San Diego for it's called a summer springboard program. It's basically like a college experience and to like get a sample of college classes. So I am taking my 16-year-old to the airport to send her to California. And I don't know what I'm more nervous about is that or this webinar. It's like probably,
That's so
neck and neck.
funny. Oh, we got watching the Olympics. It's the opening tonight, I believe. It's very exciting. I will be headed to the Dan and Shay concert, if anyone else is going at the amphitheater tonight.
Fun.
All right. So we will get things started now. Thank you all for joining our very first Univera Healthcare Pharmacy webinar. We have a great webinar lined up for you today on specialty drug trends and solutions. I am your host, Kristen Wuckelchuk, and I am a marketing manager on the pharmacy team. Today, I am joined by our speakers, Morgan McCarthy, who is a board-certified pharmacist and one of our clinical account consultant pharmacists on the team, as well as Chris Carraz, who is one of our pharmacy consultants. If you have any questions while we're presenting, please feel free to put them in the Q&A chat that I will be monitoring. We won't answer any questions during the presentation, but we'll leave some time at the end to answer anything that comes through. So thank you again for joining us today, and I will now be turning it over to Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, for that introduction. And again, I just want to thank everybody who takes time out of their busy schedule to join Chris and I to talk about the specialty drug trends and solutions. For a brief agenda, I will be reviewing the different trends that we're currently tracking and then review some of the drugs in the pipeline. And then I will hand it over to Chris to discuss the integrated medical and pharmacy solutions available to optimize spend in this category. Again, we'll finish up with some key considerations and leave time for that Q&A at the end. So before we dive into all things specialty, I did want to reiterate our mission and vision at Univera Healthcare. So our mission to help people in our communities live healthier and more secure lives through access to high quality, affordable healthcare. And our vision to be recognized and valued as the community and business resource for healthcare security through financial strength, effective cost control, ease of use, and commitment to health improvement. So now we'll dive into the meat and potatoes of the webinar. First, we'll be looking at the different trends and the specialty landscape overall. So we all know that specialty drugs contribute a significant amount of spend for our groups, both on the pharmacy and medical benefit. When we look at the pharmacy benefit, we have a small percentage of prescriptions that come from these specialty drugs, but they can contribute anywhere from 45 to 50% of that spend. So looking at what we're preparing for and what we're keeping on our radar, we see gene therapy, cancer drugs, orphan drugs being some of the top trends. In 2023, the average list price of a drug was around $300,000, up from $70,000 in the previous year. This is mainly attributed to several new approvals in these three categories. When you look at gene therapy, it is predicted that the FDA will be approving anywhere from 10 to 20 of these products each year. And then by 2026, it's expected that this spend will rise to over $25 billion, and that's up from $5 billion just a few years ago. And cancer drugs, here we see new types of cancer being diagnosed all the time. We do have over 2 million new cases diagnosed annually. This leads to a significant amount of pharmaceutical activity in this space. With the advancements of technology, it's led to the development of targeted treatments and those CAR T therapies that have very high list price. And orphan drugs or drugs to treat rare diseases, over almost 40% of these drugs have an annual cost over $100,000. It's expected by the end of this year that this category of drugs will account for over $240 billion in drug spend, which is more than a fifth of all prescription sales. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we're also tracking biosimilars. So biosimilars induce competition and increase access and affordability for our members. So we have seen several new approvals in the last 5 years. Just last year in 2023, we saw multiple biosimilars for the #1 drug in the world, Humira, launch. And by 2030, it's expected that nearly half of those top 25 specialty drugs in the US will have a biosimilar equivalent. So we'll take a deeper dive into each of these categories, but starting off with biosimilars. So as a refresher, a biosimilar is a biologic product that has no clinically meaningful differences and is highly similar to a already FDA approved drug known as the reference product or innovator drug. So the first biosimilar in the US was approved back in 2015, and you can see from the chart that over the last 9 years, we've had over 50 additional biosimilars approved and 16 additional reference categories. So currently 2024 is a record year for the approval of biosimilars. We've already had 12 new products approved just in the first half of the year. This exceeds 2019 that had 10 products throughout the entire year. So currently there are 57 biosimilars available for 17 different products, but not all of these products have launched. So although the biosimilar is approved, some of the times due to patent litigation, it delays the launch of these products in the market. So looking at the different categories where biosimilars currently have or where products currently have biosimilars. So when we look at the cancer space, Rituxan, Herceptin, and Avastin, these are 3 drugs that each have multiple biosimilars available for several years now. We've seen a lot of the market move from that innovator drug onto one of the biosimilars. And moving down into supportive oncology with Neulasta, Neupogen, and Procrit, these products also have multiple biosimilars and have been around for quite some time, allowing a shift to a biosimilar. When we look in the inflammatory conditions, so again, this is a space where we see trending year over year for a lot of our book of business. The last 2 years have been really exciting with biosimilars. You know, when we see Humira biosimilars finally coming to market, and now with approvals of Actemra and Stelara biosimilars, we can really start to see that competition drive down costs and increase affordability there. Remicade is a product that has had multiple biosimilars for several years, so we have seen a big shift in the market off that brand product onto a biosimilar. When we look forward into what's coming on the horizon for biosimilars, again, there are 4 additional products in the next 5 to 10 years in the inflammatory space that are expected to have a biosimilar. So again, Cosentyx, Taltz, these are, and Dupixent, some of the top drugs that we see. So, you know, in the next 5 years, these products are expected to have biosimilar competition. When we look at the GLP-1s, so we cannot have a pharmacy trend webinar without discussing GLP-1s in some fashion. So although not typically thought of as specialty drugs, Trulicity will have to take this pathway of having a biosimilar. Whereas some of the other GLP-1s, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Victoza, those are considered traditional drugs, and they will just go through the pathway of having a generic. So Trulicity will have biosimilar competition in 2027, whereas the other Ozempic, Mounjaro generics won't enter the market until after 2032. But still something that's coming in the horizon, and again, can induce some competition in that space. When we look at the cancer drugs, so Perjeta, Keytruda, Opdivo, these are more often than not in the top spend for our medical specialty drugs. So drugs, that are covered under the medical benefit that a patient must go to a healthcare provider, outpatient facility to have an infusion or an injection. So Keytruda and Opdivo, again, these drugs are highly utilized for cancer treatments. Those will have biosimilars by 2028, and then Perjeta in the next year or two. On the same topic of cancer, this is one of the trends that we're tracking. So there have been a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, concentration in pharmaceutical activity here. There's over a third of the research and development pipeline dedicated to oncology. When we look at the timeline, you can see from 2014 to 2023, there have been over 120 new oncology drug approvals. So this category is something that we've never seen. We don't normally see this many drugs getting approved for one specific condition. It allows for innovative new treatments for the patients, but can pose a significant financial risk for our clients. Just in 2023, there were 13 drug approvals for rare cancers and tumors. So we're seeing treatments for cancers that were not there even 10, 15 years ago. We have new therapies for mantle cell lymphomas, new treatments for large B-cell lymphoma, for treatment for desmoid tumors for the first time. And 2024 is going to be no different. So we have the first year that there will be over 2 million new cancer diagnoses and set to have an additional 17 drug approvals this year. So again, with these new drugs coming to market does offer innovative treatments. So we will continue to see this trending in the future. We have patients starting on new drug therapy. Sometimes they have to start on multiple drugs at the same time with, the change in guidelines, and really patients living longer and being on these medications longer that increases the cost. So in 2024, these are the oncology drugs that have their review dates for FDA approval. So there have already been 5 drug approvals for certain cancers thus far. As you can see from the chart, these drugs cross on both the medical and pharmacy benefit. So keep that in mind when we're talking about solutions to help optimize trend there. Some of these drugs have already received a response letter from the FDA. What that means is that there may have been issues with the manufacturing. They may have found maybe an issue with the safety or efficacy of the drug. So the manufacturer will have to take that back and make sure they solve those issues before moving forward and receiving FDA approval. Although they have their review date set for this year, does not necessarily mean that they will gain the FDA approval. But again, these are 17 drugs that we are tracking for this year. Now, moving forward with rare disease, orphan drugs, and gene therapy, we kind of can talk about all of these in one section, but gene therapy is a very specific type of treatment. So we'll kind of go over that separately next. But first, covering rare disease and orphan drugs. So these orphan drugs are used to treat a disease or condition that affects less than 200,000 people in the US. There are over 7,000 rare diseases that have been classified. And again, with the advancement in technology, it allows us to find more rare diseases, which is great. We can discover a cause for something and have the research there to create a treatment for that. But we do have 1 in 10 Americans living with a rare disease, so over 30 million people. So although these diseases are very rare, since there are over 7,000 of them, if you have a group that has 1 or 2 of these members, they are more often than not one of your high cost claimants. They're on a drug therapy that costs several $100,000s. So can again pose financial challenges for the group. Just last year, there were over 50% of the new drug approvals that received orphan drug designation. So it's great because it brought first-time treatments for diseases like Chapel syndrome, Rett syndrome, and Frederica's ataxia. Within those approvals were some gene therapies. So gene therapies are innovative treatments that work by replacing and activating or introducing new genes to help the body treat and potentially cure diseases. Currently, they are being studied for rare, complex, inherited, or genetic diseases. So in the last several years, we've seen gene therapies be approved for diseases such as spinal muscular atrophy, some forms of genetic blindness, hemophilia, both A and B, sickle cell disease, and various types of cancer. So a lot of the times these gene therapies are being approved and with a astronomical price tag. So just this year, we've seen the highest drug approved with a price of $4.25 million. But again, these gene therapies are providing either treatments for diseases that previously didn't have any, or in some cases, for diseases that already required expensive medication. So when we take hemophilia, for example, both A or B, these patients would require treatment with the certain factor that they don't have. So sometimes based on the disease severity, they can spend anywhere from $100,000 to close to $1 million in factor each year. So you'd have to evaluate, this disease severity, the cost effectiveness of the gene therapy when considering that. When we look forward in the gene therapy and orphan drug space, really it's technology, right? The advancements have enabled the targeting of these diseases and will play a key role in the growth of orphan drug development. Gene therapy, we've seen several come to market. There were 5 gene therapies approved in 2023, an additional 5 products that are going to be reviewed for approval this year. And cancer and rare diseases remain the top indications or categories that they are evaluating these therapies in, but that doesn't mean that this can lead to the development of treatment options for more common disease states. There is a gene therapy in the pipeline, clinical trials for diabetic neuropathy, which we all know is very common within the population. So it can increase population and increase the potential impact for these therapies. When we look at the competition from the pipeline, so, we've talked about the pipeline with new drugs coming to market, especially in the oncology orphan drug space. We also have to consider competition from drugs that are already approved. So these drugs are gaining expanded indications, and with expanded indications comes increased utilization, which also drives spend up. So we just put 3 drugs together to show, how these drugs gain expanded indications and in a short amount of time. So Rinvoq was first approved in 2019 for the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis, and just in 5 short years have gained an additional 5 inflammatory conditions, and then is still studying for 2 additional inflammatory conditions. We look at Keytruda. So again, a breakthrough therapy in several different cancers, was first approved in 2014 for melanoma. Now has 17 different cancers that it can be used for. So this, this drug can be used up front in some of these cancers, or maybe second or third line. But there are over 100 active trials utilizing Keytruda. So they are looking, at where is the place in therapy for some of the cancers it already has approved, or looking at it for new cancers such as pancreatic and ovarian. So, if it receives approval to be first line for some cancers, then it can replace more conventional, less expensive oncology therapies, which would again increase costs. So where we track these, we track the pipeline, we track the indications that they get to make sure we would have criteria in place to say that it's medically necessary and appropriate. Again, looking at semaglutide, not a specialty medication, but something that we'll continue to see trending in the next couple years. So first approved in 2017 as Ozempic for type 2 diabetes, now has that additional product, Wegovy, that's approved for weight management. We saw earlier this year that Wegovy again got the label expansion for risk reduction in major adverse cardiac events. And the pharmaceutical activity with these GLP-1 medications is insane. I listed just a few indications where they're being studied: liver disease, kidney disease, sleep apnea, heart failure, Alzheimer's. I think every day I see a new article of a new indication that they are exploring here. So again, if they have these increased indications, it will just expand the trend here further to make sure that, we're tracking it, we have it on our radar, and to make sure, again, that there will be criteria in place for when these expanded indications get added. I will now pass it over to Chris to look at the medical and pharmacy solutions we have around specialty drug.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay, took myself off mute. You can hear me, right, Morgan? Kristen?
You got it.
Awesome. Okay, so Morgan covered, what the landscape is looking like and some new trends. And I'm going to spend some time now kind of connecting the dots on what programs we have in place to address these trends for our mutual customers. And I know many of you may work on different lines of business and funding, so I'm going to do my best as I go through this to try and call out what funding arrangements these programs may apply to. Kind of just starting this off with the backbone of our strategies is our utilization management programs. So these will be included for all of our fully insured groups and optional for other funding arrangements. In its simplest terms, what we're attempting to do with these programs here is to determine, is this the right drug for the right member at the right time? So all of these high costing new specialty medications that Morgan mentioned and was going over, they will have some type of utilization management apply. With the first one mentioned here being prior authorization. So with prior authorization, our clinical pharmacists and physicians review medication requests to make sure that the choice of drug or dose is appropriately prescribed based on FDA and manufacturer guidelines and clinical standards. And then with step therapy, we have edits in place where utilization is managed through a series of steps. So what that means is certain medications are not covered until one or more equivalent drug is tried first. Last one on here is quantity limits, almost exactly what it sounds like, that there are edits in place to limit quantities and be sure that prescriptions are in line with FDA approved dosage requirements. Another important part of our strategy is biosimilar optimization, and this is going to apply to all funding arrangements for groups that have our pharmacy benefits. Morgan had spent some time talking about biosimilars, and biosimilars are absolutely an important tool in advancing healthcare quality, outcomes, and affordability. but they also require very careful evaluation and consideration as partners in the healthcare space. And when it comes to biosimilars, we're very diligent in evaluating them across the spectrum of drug safety, member and provider impact, cost, and also the manufacturer supply chain. We are committed to healthcare improvement and manage these costs while assuring there's no compromise in quality or outcomes for our members. So a main goal of this program is to assure that we introduce competition in the marketplace while also making sure that we do it in a way that does not compromise the overall health outcomes. The end result of this is that we have preferred products in each category where there is a biosimilar available. And we've done this in a way that helps manage these costs for our employer groups while not sacrificing a member's quality of care. Specialty drug benefit optimization. So this will again apply to all commercial group customers. And this is a significant benefit of having pharmacy and medical benefits integrated together, because what we are doing essentially is we are optimizing what benefit the drug claim will process under. So some of these specialty medications that we're talking about here, they could potentially process under the medical benefit or the drug benefit. And we have a team of clinical pharmacists that are continually reviewing a list of claims and drugs that have potential to provide savings if they're moved from the medical over to the pharmacy benefit. And the goal of the program is essentially to drive affordability by reducing spend of specialty drugs that can be converted from the medical to pharmacy benefit at a lower net cost. The goal, what we're looking for is scenarios where your employer groups are saving and members have equal or lower copays, and there's no disruption because this is something that's done behind the scenes. A medication assurance program. Now this program is for self-funded groups only. Morgan spent some time here talking about the pipeline and what's coming and the pace at which some of these new drugs are coming to the market. And some of these drugs come to the market through the FDA accelerated approval process. And with the accelerated approval, it can leave our plan sponsors and employer groups covering drugs that have not been fully clinically proven to be effective. So they have not completed all, say, phase 3 clinical trials for their drug. And we've seen examples where accelerated approval drugs are covered for a number of years, only to then later be pulled from the market because they did not show to be clinically beneficial. So with medication assurance, what we're doing is we're monitoring these accelerated approval drugs, the ones that agree to participate in the program, and we hold the manufacturers to a financial guarantee that their drug will meet program requirements. If a manufacturer does not agree to participate in the program, then their accelerated approval drug is not covered for groups that take the medication assurance program. But essentially what this does is this helps provide an option for our self-funded employers to hold these manufacturers accountable that accelerated approval drugs will eventually be proven to be clinically effective. With cancer treatments being one of the largest trend drivers in the specialty drug space, we began a consultative partnership with OncoHealth. So OncoHealth, this will apply to all commercial group customers that have pharmacy benefits with us. OncoHealth, this is probably going to be something that is behind the scenes and that you as our broker partners or our employer groups may not even be aware of. It's something that we are doing. But essentially, we've recognized how complex cancer treatments are and how quickly the costs of a member's treatment can escalate once they're diagnosed with cancer and start treatment. And OncoHealth is a team of oncologists and board-certified oncology pharmacists that provide consultative services on drugs used to treat cancer. So what this is doing is that now our members have their cancer treatment regimens reviewed by an oncology specialist. They're being reviewed by either an oncologist or a board-certified pharmaceutical oncology specialist. This gives our employer groups greater confidence that approved treatments are medically necessary and appropriate. And this also has allowed for peer-to-peer interactions between the members oncologist as well as an oncology specialist on our end as well, which has also strengthened our provider partnerships. Now the site of care program. Some of these drugs that we're discussing, some of these specialty drugs, they can be administered at different sites of care. So that could be in a hospital-based infusion center, a doctor's office, or in the member's home through home infusion providers. There could also be scenarios where a member is receiving an IV formulation of a drug that could also have a self-injectable formulation available. And the goal of the site of care program is to continually monitor our group's claims data and look for opportunities to transition these members to a lower costing setting. So this can generate significant savings for our employer group customers while also offering a more convenient solution for the member. And I wanted to make sure to call out, you may have recently seen a broker blast that just came out, but there are some new exciting updates to the site of care program. And this will be rolling out in the coming months. But what it is a new required version of the site of care program. You'll see on this slide, it's mentioned as voluntary. With the required version of this program, what that means is that if there is a lower costing option available to the member, they're required to use the lower costing option. For our insured business, they will be enrolled in the required version of the program starting January 1st. And with our claims-based billing groups, they will have this as an option to choose from between the voluntary or the required version of the program. And Smart Rx Assist, this is one of our newest programs that just became available for self-funded groups only on July 1st. And so far it's been very well received. This does not apply to copay-based or hybrid plans, or I'm sorry, this does only apply to copay-based or hybrid plans. This is a program that can provide our self-funded groups with significant savings on medical specialty drugs. So these are specialty drugs processing under the medical benefit, and they're typically administered at an IV infusion or an outpatient facility. And these are drugs that are often treating cancers or rare diseases, and they're often some of the most costliest treatments impacting employer medical spend. And what Smart Rx Assist is doing is that it identifies manufacturer assistance dollars in the marketplace for these drugs, and it allows our employers to share in those funds that are available. And the best part of this program is that this is done in a way that there is no disruption to the member. They continue getting the drug at the same place that they're used to getting it at. And it also eliminates their copay or cost share responsibilities. And the last program that I'm going to touch on today is our Save On program. This is, again, only available to our self-funded customers. Similar to Smart Rx Assist, Save On is a program that takes available manufacturer assistance dollars and allows employers to share in those funds. But this is only for drugs that process under the pharmacy benefit. And as you can see on this slide here, our self-funded employers have seen significant savings by participating in this program. In 2023, almost $15 million in savings for our commercial employer groups. And many of the drug names you heard in the first part of this presentation will fall under the Save On program. So this is absolutely an effective way for our self-funded employers to help manage some of these cost trends. We do also have a version of this program available that is HSA compliant for high deductible health plans, and that version is called Save On Adapt. And now before I kind of pass this back to Morgan to close this out, I just wanted to acknowledge this is just intended as a high-level summary. There's many other strategies and programs that we do have available. For purposes of our time today, we wanted to give this high-level overview. If for any of these programs, if you'd like more details or want to review which of these are a best fit for your specific employer group, as always, you can reach out to your employer group's assigned sales representative. And with that, I will pass it back to Morgan.
All right, thank you, Chris. Just to wrap it up with a few key takeaways, the specialty landscape continues to evolve. So we see these new drugs coming to market at a record pace, new indications, new types of therapy with the gene therapies and cellular therapies. So we want to make sure that we continue to be a good partner with you on these innovative strategies to help best manage these costs and provide best access and quality of care for our members. So the technology advancements will continue to provide these innovative treatments for our members, but continue to present the financial challenges for our clients. So again, this was our first pharmacy webinar. We want to continue to have these webinars to provide education and keep you all informed on what's going on, because we all know pharmacy is a part of healthcare that is constantly changing, and we want to make sure that we're presenting on what's trending and again, like I said, keeping you informed on what we're doing at Univera to help keep pace with the market. So again, reach out to your assigned sales consultant if you do want to review any of the programs and strategies any further to see what's the best fit for your specific clients. And with that, I will say again, thank you for the participation and pass it back to Kristen to close us out.
Thank you, Morgan and Chris, for being here to share all your insight today on the specialty drug market and our programs we have helping with costs. We are now going to move into a Q&A session. We did get a couple questions through. So the first one, Morgan, I'm going to give to you is about our strategy around Humira biosimilar and if it will remain on the formulary for 2025.
Oh, great question. And one that we have been getting out in the market a lot. We saw over 10 biosimilars come to market for Humira. And we do have a very strong strategy around the Humira biosimilars at Univera. We have seen other PBMs such as CVS take the approach of excluding Humira, but for 2025, we have evaluated every aspect of the strategy, and we do have two preferred biosimilar products, which are Siltezo and Hadlima, that are at parity with Humira. So it will still continue to be an option on our formularies.
Thank you, Morgan. And then the second question I'm going to give to you, Chris. Will some of the self-funded programs be available to our fully insured groups in the future?
Yes, good question. And I know sometimes you hear about these programs and they sound great and you're like, I want that for my fully insured group, but we say, nope, it's self-funded only. And probably the biggest ones are the copay assistance programs. So SmartRx Assist and Save On that we talked about. So unfortunately, the problem there is that with current New York State regulations, specifically New York State accumulator laws, it really limits the value they can provide for insured business. So essentially under the current legislative landscape, it's not something we see being able to offer for fully insured groups. And essentially, anytime you're hearing some of these programs come out and they say it's self-funded only, it's most likely due to regulatory restrictions. It's not because we don't want to offer it to fully insured groups.
Thank you, Chris. And that is our last question. So this will conclude our webinar for today. Thank you all for joining. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to your Univera Healthcare account sales rep. A recording of this will be getting sent out, so feel free to share with anyone on your team who wasn't able to attend today. Thank you all so much for joining and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.